Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where frontline sales leaders teach you how to build and scale an outbound sales team. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your co-host, Collin Stewart. And today I'm joined by best-selling author and currently trapped in a piece of cardboard co-host Aaron Ross. Aaron, say hey. For those of you listening on the podcast and not actually watching, Aaron couldn't make it. So I've got a creepy cardboard cutout of him, and he's going to just add some color commentary to this podcast. Our guest today is a longtime listener and decided he had something to share with me. So he sent me a cold email. Obviously super receptive to that approach. If any of you have a podcast idea that you'd like to share, shoot me an email, Collin with 2 L's at predictablerevenue.com. Our guest today, I was obviously impressed by his resume. He did a tour of duty at managing BDRs at Salesforce and currently oversees both SDRs in Atlanta and over in the UK for QASymphony. He's developed some best practices around managing remote SDRs, which we might get a little bit into today, but mostly we're going to focus about his best practices around getting the most out of one-on-ones. I'd like to welcome Sean Banks, Director of Sales Development at QASymphony, to the show.
Hi, Collin. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
Obviously a topic that, we all could, probably get a ton of value out of. I'm really excited because it's something that I've been doing myself a lot more lately, trying to get better at our one-on-ones. I previously had a bit of a framework that we followed, but it just felt so, we got the exact same thing every week and week and week. So what I think the structure for our conversation today, I think, is going to be talking about here's why you should do one-on-ones if you're not currently doing them. We're going to talk about an overview of your process, and then you're going to show us, what an actual one-on-one looks like. Sounds good?
Absolutely.
Love it, man. So let's start with why should we care? Why should we even be doing one-on-ones with our team?
Yeah. So the way I think about the problem that with one-on-ones in sales development is so often that you have the sales development rep or the business development rep. It's in all likelihood one of their first, if not their first role in sales. So they're new to this experience. And for a sales development leader, very often it's their first run at managing. Maybe they were an account executive and they wanted to get into leadership. So they switched over to being a BDR manager, which is what I did at Salesforce. So you've got two people who really don't know what should happen in a sales related one-on-one. And with the result of that is quite often that one-on-one just is a run through a dashboard. You pull up your dashboard, you say, hey, you're set this many meetings, you've made this many calls, you need to make more calls. And it's not a productive conversation for anyone. The rep's not learning anything. The manager's not learning how to coach better. And it creates it's a waste of 20 minutes or a half hour, but they feel forced. So I think it's really important for that to be a time where you give, for a manager, you're giving that rep your full attention. You're not on your phone. You're not looking at dashboards. You're talking about them and not just the metrics, but also, how they're enjoying their work, what they're excited about, what's working, what's not working, what they don't like about, the office snack situation. That's your opportunity to get information out of that rep. And it should be something that I honestly think should be prioritized. I don't think a lot of people will be we'll move one-on-ones around on the calendar. For me, that's the time that's a locked time where I won't reschedule a one-on-one for anyone. A one-on-one with a rep is really important.
So two sort of follow-up questions there. How long are these one-on-ones, and how frequently do you do them?
I do a one-on-one once a week with every rep for about 20 to 30 minutes. I put them on the calendar for 30 minutes. I would say on average, they last about 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay. And so let's walk through, talk to me about your process. So we've got, I understand why. Actually, before we jump into that, can you talk to me about some of the outcomes, some of the reasons why SDR manager or a sales manager might want to sit down with their people one-on-one every single week? Because if you got a team of 10, this is 8 to 10, that's a really large commitment time-wise.
Yeah. So I think if it's really hard to just diagnose a lot of the problems that one can see on a dashboard from just looking at that dashboard. I'll give you an example. I've had a rep, this was actually my previous job at Salesforce, who was doing all the inputs correctly, making the calls, sending the emails, and that was very evident on the dashboard, but wasn't, there wasn't the conversion into meetings. They weren't getting the meetings, they weren't getting the opportunities. And like from a dashboard there, you could be like, well, maybe you just aren't, maybe you're not making the calls correctly. Maybe you're dialing at the wrong time. You can make a lot of inferences, but actually understanding like what's going on in that person's, approach might give you a lot more information. So what I found in this scenario was that the person was just reaching out to the wrong titles. He was like, and then I also found through that conversation that his push for the meeting and his call just went a little bit sideways all the time. So I think you're going to get more information from those one-on-ones. Additionally, I think it's great for building trust with your people. I think there's a lot of there's some research that I'm a big fan of. It's from Bob Sutton at at Stanford, and he was doing this project on what makes someone a good manager, and kind of as like a throwaway question, just kind of like for reporting purposes, they throw in like, how do you feel about when you leave a meeting with your manager? And what ended up coming from that research was that was actually the strongest indicator of a leader's effectiveness. So how you feel when you leave a one-on-one meeting, when you leave your manager's office, is actually the biggest indicator of how that manager is viewed among his people. So if you are having regular meetings with your people and you're coming with positive things, good next steps, they're going to feel better about their job. They're going to feel more excited to go out there after a meeting and go crush it. And you're just going to get, a better culture among your team.
So you should be doing NPS scores at the end of every meeting. How did you feel about today's meeting?
Exactly. I mean, I don't want to go get that far because I'm not sure how my scores would look, but it's essentially that kind of thing. It's like, how effective those meetings are is going to be directly correlate with how you are doing as a leader.
Yeah. And I don't think taking an NPS at the end of any meeting is going to be a really good use for anything. But I think if you're just watching your people, you probably get a pretty good idea of whether or not they're, pumped up, motivated, or they're a little bit downtrodden and sort of beat down by the interaction.
Yeah. And I also think, especially if you coming in as a new leader to a team, if you're inheriting a team, that's an opportunity for you to really build relationships with those people. Just showing an interest in their work. Anytime you're talking to someone, at a party or something like that, and you ask them about what they do and show a genuine interest, that person usually appreciates that. So at the very least, that should come from their manager as well.
Yeah, totally. So sounds super valuable. You're building the relationship with your team. You're also like that's your biggest point of leverage with them in terms of if you're able to diagnose these problems earlier, the sooner you get on them, the more, room for performance they have, right? You're basically impacting, everything downstream of today. They're going to get 1%, 2% better every interaction.
Yeah. And a lot of that is going to be dashboard review and that kind of stuff. It's going to be a part of it. But it's going to give you, the thing is, and at Salesforce, I was managing 14 reps when I left, and that was 7, times 30 minutes. That's 7 hours of my week just in one-on-ones. It's time consuming, but I viewed it as the most valuable time for me to do one-on-one coaching. So I think you're going to see incremental improvements. And if you're documenting things and you're leaving things with documented action items, you can always follow up and see, hey, how did we stack up against that goal we set from a week ago? We said, hey, we want to set 5 meetings by the next time we talk, and we did that.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, so when do you schedule these meetings? Are they Mondays, Fridays, middle of the week? So
it can be pretty challenging to do a day of one-on-ones. Like it's like that will absorb your whole week. So, or just you feel like you're in a conference room all day, just talking to people. So I try and spread them out across the week. So right now I have 10 reps reporting to me. So I'll probably do 3. I probably won't do any on Monday just because we have a very, leadership has a very meetings heavy day on Monday. So I'll probably send out the invites on Monday and I'll do 2 or 3 a day for the rest of the week.
Oh, so you book brand new fresh meetings every week.
Yeah,
and they're not recurring.
Because also like my team is their job is to set meetings with customers. I don't want them to have to reschedule a meeting with a customer for the following week to account for a meeting with me. So I go find time on their calendar that's available, and then I schedule it there.
Gotcha. I'm trying to picture keeping 10 different people in my head in like next steps, development of the career, all of these things. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be a really good segue into like, help me understand your process. How do you keep track of this? How do you make sure that you're adding value in all of each of these meetings?
Yeah. So I use a performance management tool. There's a ton of them out there. I use a tool called Wide Angle. It's actually a startup here in Atlanta, and I use their tool briefly at Salesforce before I was forced to use something else. That allows me to do is kind of document the entire one-on-one process. So prior to a one-on-one, when I'm scheduling it on Monday, I'm also sending out questions to the team that they need to become prepared for to answer. Because that was one of the things when I started in leadership that was really surprising, is how not everyone prepares for a one-on-one with things that they want to bring up to their boss. Most reps will just show up and be like, what do you want to talk about? Mm-hmm. So you have to give. So if you want to get a valuable coaching experience out of that, you need to prompt your reps with things that they need to come prepared to talk about, and make them put some thoughts down before they come to the meeting. So I'll send out 5 questions on Monday that the rep needs to come prepared to talk about. One of them will just be like, what are your agenda items? One of them will be, the last question will be, what are 3 things you want to accomplish before our next meeting? Like, what are your 3 goals for our next one-on-one? And then the 3 center questions will rotate among a bucket of one-on-one questions I have. It could be, what was your biggest accomplishment of the last week? What's a bottleneck in your process? What's a part of your job that you wish you didn't have to do? That's how we figured out we needed an intern to do all our list scrubbing, because everyone on my team hated scrubbing lists. So you're going to find if you're asking them all the same questions week over week, you'll pick up on trends on the team as well.
And so you're asking the same set of questions across the team.
Yeah. So I'll send the same questions go out to the team. And what's cool for me is I can aggregate those responses. And when 5 people say our coffee sucks in the office, I can send that to my boss and be like, hey, can we get a new coffee vendor?
Yeah. Perfect. So it's wider angle helps you stay organized, and it's like surveying the team ahead of time, and then you're reviewing their answers during the call.
Yeah. So we review that, and we set action items through that. And we're just using that as a framework, but when I like to dig into answers. So if someone says, I struggle with prospecting, it's like, well, why do you struggle with prospecting? It's because it's time consuming. Well, why is it time consuming? That 5 whys approach that you may have heard of. I tend to use, maybe not 5 times, but I dig into the answers there and figure out what's really the issue, or what really someone feels like, or if someone's talking about accomplishment, I want to hear the whole story. I had a great meeting with Bob from Delta. Well, how'd you find Bob? Tell me about that. Tell me about your process. Could be a great win to share with our CEO. Could be a great coaching opportunity. But it gives us an opportunity to dive into some things that are on their mind. Gotcha.
And so just having those questions sort of prompts gives you the opportunity and the space to dig deeper and spend most of your time on that.
Exactly.
And then follow up, you're tracking your next steps, your action items, to-dos yourself. I mean, I'm sure the tools make it easier, but we try on the podcast to talk about, okay, these are all things that anybody could really do using a Google form or whatnot.
Yeah, I was using a Google form for this prior to finding a tool to automate it for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just a process of putting some thought into you're doing your prep work just like you would have your rep do it. Mm-hmm. And if you make it uniform across your team, it shouldn't take that much time to on a Sunday night or Monday morning, think of some things that you want to talk about with your team and send it out to each of them like, hey, come prepared to talk about all 5 of these things. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a more productive meeting. And what that's going to do is it's going to take those conversations to the next level, where someone's not going to come in and talk about, hey, Sean, I'm having trouble getting meetings. It's like, no, I'm having trouble breaking into these 3 accounts because I'm hitting these walls. and I want to have a strategic discussion with you about it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So outside of this process, let's just sort of talk about the overview of the process right now. So you book them at the beginning of the week. You've got a tool that helps you keep track of all the questions you're going to ask and their responses. What about the follow-up, right? Like, I know you're keeping track of to-dos and all that, but like, what happens outside of that meeting that contributes to this process?
Yeah. So to be clear, like the one-on-one is not the only time I'm having one-on-one interaction. Like I'm in an office right now, but I like to sit out in the row with the team and give that day-to-day coaching. So, but the follow-up is just, it comes through review, like keeping a tab on the goals that they're setting. And I kind of keep a list to myself of like, okay, Kyle set this goal to set this many meetings. I'm taking a look at that. And I just need to be conscious of what's going on for each rep, what their individual goals are, and speak to that and give, congratulations when it's due, when someone, hits their goal 3 days into the week, that's fantastic. And, make it so that one-on-one's just not the only interaction that we have throughout the week.
Mm-hmm. So you're out there walking around, you're keeping track of it, you're celebrating with them.
Yeah. I like to be out on the floor as much as possible. Offices kind of creep me out sometimes. So I like that open office environment and being available to answer questions. I think it's so much easier to, just have someone raise their hand and say, Sean, I have a question, rather than to Slack me and me have to like type out my answer. It's just so much faster. So I like to have, the one-on-one is the formalized coaching mechanism, but real-time coaching is part of just my leadership style.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm a big fan of the open office as well. I didn't think I would like it as much with a sales team. I'm learning that like a good headset with noise cancellation is key, and headphones are also key, so that you can just block out everybody else's calls when you need to hammer down and get some good work done. Yeah.
Back when I was an AE at Salesforce, we had that kind of setup, and I had only the one earphone on, and I had a pack of those like airplane earplugs for the other ear. And if anyone saw the green earplug in my ear, they knew that I meant business that day.
Not now. I'm in the zone.
Yeah.
I love being able to sort of listen in on the conversations, and it's ad hoc. You can pick up on things here and there, and you can tell what questions the customers might be asking. And like, I've got Post-it notes that I'll just sort of make notes. And when they finish up the call, I'll go sit down and be like, hey, how'd that go?
Yeah. I think also like the one-on-one piece can enable you as a leader to to get better responses from that ad hoc coaching. Because if someone comes, if I'm on a call, I'm a rep, and some manager who's just, I view as my boss, comes over and say, hey man, that call wasn't that great. I heard you say this, and this, you should say something different. I may react poorly to be like, about that and be like, what does this guy know? But if you're engaging with them and getting deep into their business and understanding, how they're operating through that one-on-one conversation, when you give that ad hoc feedback, they'll probably and maybe negative feedback. Hey, you didn't do too well on this. They'll probably be really responsive to it because they have that trust with you, because you've taken an interest in them, but they know that you have their best interest in heart.
So we've talked a little bit about the process of like, so here's why you should do them. Here's the process of, how you structure these things. Let's talk about what do you actually do within that sort of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So what are the things that everybody needs to talk about, sort of questions aside, what does that look like for you?
So I think the clearest thing is you need to give them a little bit of an open forum to talk about whatever they want. The one-on-one, the goal of the one-on-one is to help the rep, not to help the manager. But at the same time, you do need to always talk about metrics. You need to talk about conversion rates. You need to talk about, what the goals are. And if you're managing closers versus SDRs or BDRs, those are going to look different. But I'm always talking about metrics, but it's a component of my of a larger conversation. Outside of that, I think it's really important that you come away with everything with goals, that there needs to be action items, and that the reps are accountable to that. I think, too often we say, I've seen in my time where you have a manager say, okay, you're going to hit this goal by next week. And they're not setting SMART goals. That was one thing that I've dealt with my UK reps a couple of times, is they were setting just like, I'm going to set a lot of meetings. And I'm like, no guys, we need to, how many meetings and when are you going to set them by? And, who are you going to set them with? So forcing them to set those SMART goals is also something that I think should come from every one-on-one.
Gotcha. And in terms of the types of questions, last time we chatted, you mentioned there's a few different types that you were asking. It's not just the same one. And earlier in the podcast, you mentioned you've got, a whole list. But can you give me like the high level sort of groups of, what these questions might be?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's different stuff about just like, it'll be maybe some sales specific questions that, wouldn't necessarily apply if you were talking to someone giving a one-on-one to someone in HR. You're talking about like, what was the best call that you've had this week? What's the worst call that you had this week? What's a meeting that went really well? What's an account you're trying to break into? Those types of things. So just allow them to speak about one specific thing that is on their mind and go into great detail about that so you can better understand their process for it. So I'll have a bucket of maybe sales questions. Then I always talk about like career development. I think just this is my opinion, but like I view sales development, that development piece is a very operative word where you have like you're developing sales, but you're also developing people. And like at QASymphony, we view sales development not just as a funnel for AEs, but a funnel for talent for the whole company. So we don't necessarily force someone into an AE role. We use it as an opportunity to just bring in talent, get them familiar with our business, and then put them in the place they want to go. Mm-hmm. So like that career conversation is really important to me because I may have someone on my team who's better suited for a marketing role, and I want to allow him or her to express that interest and talk to me about it. So I ask questions like, who's someone in the office you really admire? Who's someone you want to work closer with? What's an area of the business like you wish you got more exposure to? Like those types of things, I want to ask to just uncover things about that SDR's path, because at the end of the day, no one wants to spend more than 12 to 18 months in this type of role. They want to use it as a stepping stone to their next job. And then the final thing is going to be more like just company culture type questions. How do you enjoy our team events? Like, do you enjoy our company events? Like, what's something you would change about our office? Those are another bucket of questions. I think most of I would say I probably focus more on those sales questions. I probably ask more of those in a week, but I have different buckets that I pull from that are going to allow for, the conversation to be different every time. We probably wouldn't rotate a question in. I probably wouldn't see the same question in a one-on-one more than once a quarter. Oh, wow. So lots of questions then. Yeah. I mean, if you're doing, what is that, like 12 one-on-ones a quarter, I got a bucket of 36 plus questions that I could ask from because two of them are the same every week. What do you want to talk about and what are your goals? Gotcha. Talk to me a little bit about before we move on, the last question. So what are the three things that you want to accomplish over the next week? Yeah. Generally, isn't every rep just going to be like, I want to hit my numbers? Generally, that's going to be an answer for most reps. But the goals can be different. You can use that as you can find out things that they're focused on outside of work through that. I got I was telling you before the call, I got a rep who hurt his knee playing basketball. One of his goals this week, like he's a very consistent rep. He always hits his numbers, but one of his goals this week was to start his physical training, to start getting back and being healthy. And that, that gives me a view into what's important to him outside of just hitting his meetings target. Also it gives you a better understanding of like how they're going about hitting their goals. Sometimes a lot of the reps that I have, they'll say, I want to set 4 meetings before our next call. But some of them will say, I just want to make 500 calls before our next meeting. That may not be the right approach. So the goals can be different. I think the key thing is to keep everything open-ended. Don't make it like a multiple choice test because you're going to get a better view into what's going on inside the brain of your rep by leaving things open-ended. Gotcha. So how do you make sure you're not just getting the answers that, they think you want to hear? That's tough. I think you have to keep documentation of this process is important. And, I've had reps who, say like, I'm going to do better in this area. I'm going to do these things to do better. And, you can look at the tape. You can look at the documentation. Hey, you said you were going to do better in this area. You said you were going to do better in this area. That's the tough part about being a manager is like when someone's really not executing on their targets. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge. That's probably the least easy part about this is, going back, checking the math and being like, okay, something's not adding up here. You've been saying you're working on this thing. What are you actually doing?
Yeah.
So that's a challenging conversation for sure.
Tell me more about that, because I imagine holding reps accountable is one of the hardest parts of these one-on-ones.
Yeah, I think accountability is going to come back. Isn't as much in the one-on-one process as it is in your hiring process. You need to be, and this is a big challenge for any company who has sales development, is that you need to be solving for that professional maturity question pretty early on in the hiring process. Is this person someone who can come in, and if I tell him to make 40 calls a day and send 100 emails a day, he's going to be able to do it? So you need to be testing for that in your hiring process, because it's a much more difficult thing to teach someone than it is to coach. Mm-hmm. You want to be hiring people who don't have that 40 to 50 calls a day metric is going to be really easy for them. That'll be a no-brainer, and your job is just to teach them the product and the process and give them coaching to get them up to their full potential. The accountability is something that I hope to not have to coach too often. And if I do, it's probably a more serious discussion about, hey, is this something you're really capable of doing? The metrics will always, that's why if there's one rule or two rules really that I live by, it's if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. And we run our business real time all the time. So if a rep says, hey, I just had a great meeting, and I'm like, you got nothing on the dashboard, I haven't logged it yet. It's like, well, then you didn't have a great meeting because it's not in Salesforce. So you got to set those guidelines about running your business, and then the dashboards will show you all you need to say.
I think we'll do a follow-up on this, because I'm picturing what your dashboards look like, and I want to see them sometime.
Yeah.
Maybe we do it right at the end of this call.
Yeah. I'd be happy to show you. There's a couple ones I can show you about, like what I'm looking at. One of my mentors at Salesforce, actually, she's kind of a legend in sales development. Her name is Ali Gooch. She was actually the original SDR manager at Pardot. She told me that when I was looking to move from AE into BDR management, she said, like, you need to be a dashboard ninja to be a successful BDR manager, because so much of your job is based on data and a large volume of data. And you need to be able to interpret that to make coaching decisions, but also to report to other leaders in the company, sales leaders, CEOs, whomever, who take an interest in those leading indicators of what revenue is actually going to be brought in. 100%.
And if you don't have the dashboards set up to actually get that information, you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was just, this kind of brought up the idea of, like, I know some sales leaders who are not too big into using CRM and say that they don't need to, not high tech sales leaders, but I've just spoken with some people who are not big on using the CRM for logging everything. Maybe we log deals, we log opportunities, but we don't log calls, or we don't put in call notes. You're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot there, because you're not going to be able to make informed decisions about your business and the leading indicators that are affecting it if you don't have that data.
Mm-hmm. You're flying blind, really.
Yeah.
And you're only getting the sort of rosiest picture through the eyes of the salesperson, as opposed to all of those important metrics that really lead to anything really meaningful.
Exactly.
So some advice for people that are maybe new to one-on-ones. What are the things that some people screw up in the early days that maybe people that are listening can avoid that mistake and make a new mistake this time?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've seen other managers go in and do is say, hey, I just came from being a killer AE. I know more than everyone, and I'm just going to start screwing up, giving really direct commands for what you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. While that may be a good idea for like in theory, like, because that person may be very knowledgeable in sales, you need to focus on getting to know the person who's sitting across the table from you first, understanding what they're dealing with in their process, and then working on things together. So not just giving commands, but kind of being in the trenches with them and learning with them. one of the ways that I built a lot of trust with my first team at Salesforce was I spent all my time, a lot of my time just sitting in the room with them while they were making calls, and when someone, just being there to offer feedback, and I'd have my notepad down with me and I'd just scribble some notes to them. Or one of the things I really like to do is I would like to help them mind map on a whiteboard while the call was going on. So they didn't have to take notes and I would just take the notes for them. And we would just attack it together and then we'd recap the call. That's not as much a one-on-one conversation as it's just like a building trust with a new team thing. When you're new to a one-on-one, I think going in with a plan is going to be the right approach. You may very well have to force a team to unlearn some best practices from a previous leader who wasn't as focused on maybe the individual success of the reps as much, or maybe just was focused on other things. My team that I inherited here, that was for a period of time being managed by sales ops is just like a second job for the leader of our sales ops team. So, they've kind of bounced around and they had a full-time leader in the past who did a lot of that just straight dashboard management. And, so they didn't have any muscle memory on how to interact in a one-on-one. So you have to give it some time for your methodology to kind of come into fruition where you're having, if you have 8 reps, you're having 8 awesome conversations a week.
Because I guess you're saying it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time to sort of warm them up.
Exactly. And that was probably the biggest shock for me when I came from, managing one team to managing another. It's like how it took probably longer than I expected for me to build that trust because, I just was this guy coming from another company, so I had to do that through my interactions and one-on-ones and building relationships and showing an interest in making them successful. I mean, you really have to have the rep believe that you have their best interest at heart and want to, listen to your advice and understand that you're going to go fight for them to get promoted or, get some new accounts or whatever. They have to know you have your back. You have their back.
You've got their back.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sean, that was awesome. I feel like I learned so much in the short period of time that we've had here.
Yeah.
Why don't we wrap up here and then we can do a little bonus after we play the going away music, and we'll just cut and we'll come back to your Salesforce dashboards just so we're not clicking and dragging through Salesforce.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So if you're listening, you probably want to jump on the YouTube, on our YouTube channel, just search for Predictable Revenue Podcast on YouTube. We're there. You'll be able to see, Sean's screen. He's going to walk us through a couple screenshots because he showed me last time, and this guy has his dashboards dialed.
Yeah. And for anyone who's just listening on audio, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever. Sean Banks, I work at QASymphony in Atlanta. Happy to just chat, talk shop with anyone who's in the same business.
Right on. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Sean.
Thanks, Collin.
Welcome back to Sean's Dashboards Hour. So this is the time where we have somebody who used to work at the one and only Salesforce teaching us he uses Salesforce and how he's got a black belt in Salesforce Dashboard Jitsu. So Sean, you've got 3 different dashboards to show us. You've got your team dashboard, you've got individual SDR dashboards to show, and then you've got a leadership dashboard to walk us through. Yeah.
So just to kind of give the agenda of the 3 dashboards that I really spend a lot of time in. I mean, like I said, building a dashboard and being able to manipulate data and show it to other leaders in the company is very important for being a sales development leader. But there's 3 ones that I'm going to look at. We're going to look at the team dashboard where the team kind of sees how they stack up against each other on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Then we have a SDR personal dashboard where the rep can kind of dive into their individual metrics. And then a overall organization dashboard, which I use to convey the effectiveness of my team to other leaders in the company.
Awesome.
Cool. So, and I'm sharing my screen right now, right, Collin?
Yep. Yeah, I got it.
Cool. So we have right here our SDR dashboard. So on the top, I like to keep front and center our metrics that are our output metrics, where people can understand how they're doing on as far as what gets them paid. So we have right here meetings set, meetings held. We pay our reps on meetings held. That's why I've got the dollars and pounds to represent my UK buds. I've got those up here. So, we can see that we've got reps setting a lot of meetings this month. We've got, and I've also got one person's kind of ahead here because they're our inbound rep. So that's why their quota is set a little higher, but we'd expect them to be the top, but we can see how many meetings people are set. Then when they're held, they'll move over to this dashboard, which is what they actually pays them. And then we have our team MQLs. MQLs are just meetings set from our metric standpoint, but we kind of, this is a very important metric for our investors as this MQLs number. So we kind of want, like for me, I want to get to a certain number every month to kind of, because we report that up to our investors. And I want the team to have a stake in that and understand how we're doing it month over month together.
Gotcha. And so just so I'm clear, an MQL is it set or is it off a meeting held?
Set. So it's kind of just a legacy of some older metrics that existed there. But, an MQL is when we view that like we're either a partner or a partner team is setting this or the SDR team is setting a meeting that could potentially move into an actual opportunity. That's what we view as a marketing qualified lead.
Yep.
But held is where we actually pay the SDRs because, you can inflate numbers and, hopefully none of the sales development leaders who are leading this have had to deal with this, but it's a tough conversation to have when a rep might be, logging an opportunity that isn't quite as good of an opportunity as it should be. So we're not going to pay if the person no-shows or if the meeting is just with the admin or someone in HR. We sell to people in development. So in the wrong department altogether. So that's the difference between the two. And we made that differentiation so we can, understand what's actually, this is a much better indicator of the effectiveness of the reps.
Amazing. Just before we move on, can you just help me understand, because I love what you guys are doing to actually measure this. How does that actually work in Salesforce? How are you tracking, differentiating between set and held?
Yeah. So, stages are a tough thing and they depend on different companies. At my previous company, something started at stage 1 and moved to stage 2. Here, when we create an opportunity, it starts as a stage 0, which just means it has a meeting set. So we're tracking this on the opportunity object where, when a new opportunity is created and it's in stage 0 and it's been created by an SDR, it pops up on this dashboard. If it moves to stage 1, being that it's like actually an opportunity, it then transfers to the account executive and they handle it from there. So it transfers at stage 0 and then it moves, the AE moves it to stage 1.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of like once the AE accepts it into their pipeline, then it counts as held. We do have some scenarios where the opportunity can be rejected, but the SDR still gets paid on it. That can be something where it's really a technical thing that we wouldn't expect someone in sales development to have been able to qualify for. So we're not going to fault them for that. They'll still get paid on that. But if it's a simple thing like it's just not the right person to talk to and that gets rejected, we won't pay.
Gotcha. And in terms of tactically in Salesforce, how are you tracking? Like, where are you tracking set and held dates?
So we've created custom fields for all that. So when the opportunity is created and a task is created for that set meeting for the AE, we have a workflow that populates a meeting set date, and that's how I pull it to this dashboard. Additionally, when the meeting is actually held and the AE moves it to stage 1 or rejects it, then the workflow populates that meeting held date.
Gotcha. Love it.
Yeah.
And that exists on the opportunity object itself.
Correct.
Sweet. So let's go lower. What else we have?
Yeah. So here below are the inputs and the effectiveness metrics so I'm going to view activity metrics like calls and emails as the inputs. That's really just the top of the funnel. You can throw if you've got bad conversion metrics, you can at least throw more activity at the problem. Call connects and email connects are the two most important indicators, in my opinion, of sales development success. So let's go back here to emails and calls. Straightforward stuff. Every time you make a dial, you log a call. Every time you send an email through SalesLoft, you're logging that email. Pretty much everyone's doing this kind of stuff. It's very straightforward. I think it's very important to log those emails. Some companies aren't doing that, but that's the pretty straightforward inputs metrics. Call connects, or anything that they log is like you can see here, a conversation with the lead. So if you get the operator, you're not logging that as a call connect. If you actually speak with the person you're trying to have a conversation with, you log that as a call connect. Mm-hmm. And then an email connect is actually a metric that I created like custom for our instance of Salesforce. I thought of, and then I had our awesome sales ops team actually build it for me. But this is a similar thing where it's that conversation with a person via email. We're a very email intensive prospecting team. So when someone responds to an email, and it could be a positive or negative response, we log that as an email connect. And then the subsequent emails that go through that conversation are just logged as regular emails. But this kind of gives a rep to get credit, the opportunity to get credit for effectiveness metrics on email as well as calls. So they'll just go in and log that. And I view these two metrics as the biggest leading indicator for success in actually setting meetings, because it figures out if it's a positive conversation, we actually end up getting the meeting, that's great, or we get the referral to the right person, also great. And if it's a negative conversation, the person says, hey, I'm not the right person to talk to, or hey, we just renewed with your competitor, not the right person to talk to about it, whatever, we at least pull them out of our prospecting efforts. We no longer need to spend time on them. So I still view that as positive, because it means we're advancing people through the cycle.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Okay, so we've got email connects, we've got total emails and then email connects. We've got total calls and total call connects. So you sort of figure out your ratios there. What else do we have here?
Down here, I just have like a total view of activity. Accepted leads is just how many contacts they're putting into their sales loft cadence. Mm-hmm. And then over here on the right, we just have SQL, means like it's moved to past stage 3 in our pipeline. So it's an opportunity sourced by an SDR that's moved past stage 3. And finally, closed 1. We have a long sales cycle, so it's pretty awesome when someone shows up on this dashboard.
Gotcha. Curious, what just out of curiosity, what are your stages in your opportunity pipeline?
So stage 0 is going to be that meeting set stage. Stage 1 is what we call needs analysis. It's in the pipeline. The AE has to report on it. It has to advance it, but not really from a forecasting perspective. It's not very significant. We're moving to stage 2. Stage 3 is when we're actually in a technical evaluation. At stage 3, we have very high close rates. So so that's where we're really winning the deal. Mm-hmm. Stage 4 is going to be Stage 4 is going to be more of a negotiation standpoint. Stage 5, they'll have committed, and then at stage 6, where it's closed.
Great. And what was stage 2? Sorry.
Stage 2. It's funny. I'm blanking on what it's actually called. I just view it as the numbers. It has a name, but it's basically between when we know there's a deal and when it's actually a full-on evaluation. We're understanding the requirements at that point.
Okay, great. So this is your SDR team dashboard. What about what do you show the individual personal reps?
Yeah.
Or do you show them on their personal dashboards?
So this is something that I built, and my favorite thing about this dashboard is I built it once, and through the magic of Salesforce filters, I created 9 dashboards here. I got to add my new guys to this, but through filters, I've created 9 dashboards by just creating one. So here we're looking at the meetings set and meetings held all time, but let's actually filter this by one of our reps here. So hopefully so let's put Aaron. Aaron's a great success story because he used to be our intern, and he's been killing it since we moved into SDR.
Nice.
So you can see here set and held this month. So he's already set 8 meetings this month, and 5 of them have been held. He's got his all-time records here. And then he's got a view into calls, call connects, emails connects. So we can kind of look side by side at these metrics. So he's made 70 calls today, but he's only had two convert into conversations. Probably not his best day. May have just been the time he was calling, the people he was calling. he probably is going to want to shoot for maybe a conversion rate of, maybe double that. We have very low conversion rates on calls in our industry. Emails, email connects, and I'm also looking at total connects because, like I said, I look at connects as a really important metric for converting into actual meetings. So I just track how many total connects they've had this week.
Gotcha.
Now, the big thing on the right here is going to be I want to give them visibility into some operational things like no-show rate. So you can see here, no-show rate for the last 90 days. Previously, like my team, like before I came on, had some problems with no-shows. So I made it a point to like make it visible to everyone what their no-show rate is. And you want to know, I've set a guideline that we want our no-show rate as a team to be below 10%, which I think is pretty good. I think most industry average is going to be around 15%. And you can see here, this rep, he's at 4%. So that means he's had one no-show of his last 28 meetings he's set. So pretty good. We're also got our SLA fails in the last 90 days. So this is going to be opportunities that were created. The meeting was set, and either through it no-showing or it not meeting like minimum requirements to be an opportunity, it was rejected by the team, and it was something that the rep set, and we didn't actually pay out on it because it didn't meet those requirements. So coaching opportunity for the rep, understand, hey, we need to qualify better for these things. Yeah. And then the last thing is, especially when you're managing meetings that have been set in the future and that need to advance to stage one, I want my reps to stay involved in deals and understand how they're progressing. So if we have here, clean up your stage zeros. These are meetings that opportunities that we're creating where the meeting was set to happen at some time that is a date in the past. So it's November 16th today. If the meeting has a date on it, we're supposed to actually go off on the 12th, and it's still at stage 0. We need to follow up on that. So that allows the rep to go follow up on their own deals and see, hey, do you need my help rescheduling this? Did this actually happen? Can you advance it? Because that's ultimately what's going to get them paid, is that moving to stage 1. Mm-hmm. So it's staying on top of their own work.
Gotcha. And in your organization, who's responsible for updating that? Is it the AE or is it the SDR?
The AE is responsible for progressing that opportunity. So, but I've had this not just here, but also at my previous company, where that the AE may not have the incentive to move it along. So the SDR owns that follow up, which says, hey, is there anything else you need for me to move this along? Because this is something that affects my compensation. If this is a good opportunity, let's move it along. Gotcha. But it's really also for them to know what's going on with all the deals that they create.
Perfect. I like it. That's a really, really key one, to give them that sort of visibility into, hey, I haven't been paid on this. Why not?
Yeah. The big thing for me with this dashboard, Collin, is the fact that, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 15 and so odd different reports pulling onto here. But because I threw in a filter here, it's going to give me the ability to speak to run all these different reports for different reps. Mm-hmm. And just in our one-on-ones, this is be the dashboard that I pull up when I speak to just them, not how they stack up against their peers, but what is the work that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great. So what do we want to show off anything else from the SDR or individual dashboard here, or should we move on to the next one?
This one's pretty straightforward. It's just metrics broken down over time by the rep. But I think we can move on. And this is really the my pride and joy of my dashboard creating career is this sales development trending report. It really should be the trending dashboard, but that was the title I put on here. What this shows is over the last back to May. In May, we did some changes to our process. So I kind of have the start point of May for this dashboard because the data from the first 4 months of the year is a little skewed. But back to May, how we've done on every single metric that is important to sales development. So you have our overall call volume. You can see here, call volume dropped after August. And why did that happen? Well, we had a sales training that focused more on, quality over quantity. So our call volume dropped in September, which was actually I viewed as a positive because we're making more, doing more quality stuff. You've seen here emails actually drop. We're gonna like probably level off around 12,000 emails a month. So we're almost surpassing that for October. So that should be fine. For November. We have our call connects metrics. You see, we created email connects in September, although I don't know why these are over here in June, but this is a newer metric, but it tracks how many email conversations the team is having, how many contacts we're working. And then we have the output metrics, our meetings set, our meetings held. Now here's where we look at those trending rates over our meetings held rate. So our rate is at which whether or not we're having no shows. So back in May, we had a team no show rate of 17%. Mm-hmm. In October, we've cut that in half. It's at 9 now. So we're doing better there. Our rejection rate how many times the opportunities are happening and they're actually getting rejected. These are pretty flat at about 18 to 20%. Pretty consistent here. So we're saying, so it just gives us view as to the quality of the meetings we're setting. And then we just have sourced pipeline numbers that I talked about with our VP of sales, as well as some funny names we have for different types of leads and how long it takes them to go from the meeting being held to sales qualified, which is our stage 3. So just a different day length.
So help walk me through those acronyms there. FOFU, MOFU, TOFU, LOFU.
Yeah. So those are just, BOFU is what we call our trial, our pricing requests, our, demo requests. These are the stuff that are coming in, people looking to make some type of decision. MOFU is going to be our trial scenario, people signing up for trials. We have a lot of people signing up for trials. TOFU is top of funnel. It is our people downloading ebooks, people downloading white papers. These convert at a much lower rate, but they're still a good source of people to talk to and have conversations with. And then sales is our straight up outbound. Found a person on LinkedIn, added them to Salesforce, ran a cadence on them. So those have a much longer sales cycle because they may not be necessarily ready to buy.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So what we're looking at here is the average time from a meeting to the first meeting being held all the way to hitting sales qualified.
Yeah, to being our stage 3 opportunity where we're actually in this technical evaluation where we've got all the BANT figured out, budget authority, need, timeline, all those things are in place, and we're okay, now it's just about proving the product, which we tend to do pretty awesome in because our product is awesome.
That makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Cool. So the one thing that I really like to show here is when I can look at the effectiveness of different reps, but also we have different types of roles right now. So our EMEA guys are actually just pure outbound. They don't work leads. Mm-hmm. They're actually, we actually use a outsourced company who, just basically our 2 guys work for this meeting setting company, and we've kind of taken them and be hey, well, can you be SDRs rather than just meeting setters? Mm-hmm. So I can just filter by what has our EMEA team done, and all of a sudden, look, all my data is just on our 2 EMEA reps. Or I can just filter, okay, let's just talk about the US team, the guys who sit with me here in Atlanta. I had 2 reps, now it's just 1 rep on expansion. So these people are just working existing clients, but I can filter all by those meetings, and just, I have 1 rep who she just does pure inbound. So here's how she's fared over them. So it allows me to break down the data and speak, okay, we've done well in X area. We need to improve in X area. These teams are performing in different ways. So this I think is really important, especially as teams start to scale upward. Maybe they have an enterprise team and a mid-market team. Maybe you're a sales development leader who used to manage all your reps and now you're managing 3 managers. Being able to carve data in this way is going to allow you to speak confidently to other leaders in the company about how each individual rep and team and function is doing.
Love it. I'm curious. You've got I think I know how to set a filter, but that's probably pretty standard when you're creating your sort of dashboard. I'm curious how like what's required to create those? If you click on your filter,
Yeah.
yeah. How do you create, like, I can see like filter by so-and-so that filters by their username. How do you filter it by a group of individuals?
Yeah. So I'll just come in here and show you guys is this. So I'll edit the filter here. And what this is it's sales qualified by is the term, like the term basically like who qualified this opportunity. So if it includes a certain rep name, and then I add the operator contains, and this has, here's all my my 2 EMEA reps, and here are my US reps. And since I just hired 2 new people, I'm going to add Brad and Natalie because I got 2 new reps. So this was a good exercise, Collin. So yeah, now those people are on our US team. And I'll save that there. So yeah, you can add a lot of filters. When I was at Salesforce, I actually had a very interesting role where I was managing outbound business development for 12 account teams. So 12 regional vice presidents, all were aligned with my team. And that was also 3 area vice presidents and 1 SVP. And when you're talking to sales leaders, so this is probably important for people who are doing sales development at bigger companies, is they don't care as much about like, you know, how SDRs perform against their quotas. They care about like these numbers, the qualified pipeline. So I actually added in like the sales leader that the accounts were associated with, and added in filters with that when I would show reports like these. So we could see like, okay, you know, Mr. RVP, here's all the calls that have been run, you know, on your accounts. Here's all the meetings that are set in your territory. Here's all the sales pipeline we've created in your territory. And that was another scenario where like I was covering all these different sales leaders for business development, and it became a pain. It became a pain to just give them all data on like what's going on in their regions. So I just created a dashboard and said, here's the dashboard, filter by your region, and we can skip the call.
That's huge time savings.
Yeah. Setting up it's the funny thing about working with sales leaders, you know, closing sales leaders, is every one of them thinks their territory is the most important territory in the company. So you have to manage expectations. And as a sales development leader, you can be spread pretty thin.
I'm blown away by these dashboards. I love that filter. It's such a simple thing, and I know I've seen it in there, but I've never used it myself.
Yeah, it's pretty basic, and I think, you know, you can just quickly Google how to create filters in Salesforce, and it's step-by-step instructions. But it makes you just like, when you can go into a meeting and maybe you're not even prepared with the data point, but you have your dashboards pulled up, and when someone says, hey, how are we doing an expansion note this quarter? And you can just filter quickly and be like, oh, we're trending upwards. You know, you don't have to run a full Excel analysis, but you can at least speak a little bit more confidently about your metrics.
Love it, man. And this way of building it just makes it so much simpler, so much faster, so much easier.
Yeah. So I think it's all about being a dashboard ninja. That's one of the things about, I really think in modern sales, it's not just sales development. If you're a sales leader now, you need to be able to manipulate the data to understand what's going on in your business.
I love it. John, anything else we should people need to see in your dashboards here?
No, I think that's it. You know, I'll let you know if I think of any other ones, or if over time I create some other beastly dashboards. I think as my team scales up, we're moving next year to splitting out kind of an SDR and a BDR function. So I'm going to have to figure out how to manage two very different teams and 2 different roles and different segments a little bit better. So I'll keep you posted on it as how those develop, and I'll be happy to share them.
Cool. One thing we always ask, usually when I finish the call, but I think it'd be valuable for people to hear this, is would you like to do a follow-up blog post on this topic, you know, on the Predictable Revenue blog? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's funny. The first part of our call was very focused on the soft skills of managing sales development, but I think you have to have this metrics approach to be successful as well. You need a balance of both to do well at this role. So I'd be happy to kind of share some of the ways I approach reporting to the CRO here, to the CEO, to our investors, and make sure everyone can see the ROI in sales development, because, it's the lifeblood of a growing company.
Absolutely. Sean, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Collin.